Welcome back, fellow Earthlings, for another episode. I hope y'all are doing well. And if this is your first time here on this channel, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Rogan, and I am the mysterious stoner in Ebola. And just to give you a brief summary of what goes on here on this channel. Right now, in the series you are watching, The Good, the Bad, and the Bible, I go through the Bible. I'm an ex-Christian, so I am familiar with the book. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I go through this and I talk about every story and passage by passage, every story and every bit of advice that we come across here in the Bible. And I talk about if it's good or bad. Because as I have come to discover, Christianity does not have all the answers. But don't take full offense if you're a Christian, because there are some things in the Bible that are true. Believe it or not. I am not a Christian anymore. I'm not in any other religion or anything. What I believe is my own thing, and I may talk about that at some other time, but that is not what I am here to do. I am here to help make the world a better place, because Christianity and the Bible have been responsible for some awfully terrible things in the world. I've been part of it a bit myself. I've been the victim, and I've attempted to convert other people to Christianity. Not the way they did in the Crusades or anything, mind you. I've knocked on the doors. I've been that type before. Yeah, but it's not Christianity. The religion itself is not true. I'm afraid to say. That's just how it is. But there are some things in the Bible worth noting, so we're going through and we are looking for them. But we are taking a note of everything negative in the Bible. So my parents taught me to take the Bible literally. Not all Christians are like that, but mine were. Mine were very literal in what they believed. We believed every single thing that the Bible said. And if it didn't make sense, we found a way to try to make sense of it. So we're not talking about the metaphorical meanings of these stories, although that is a very interesting topic, but it is not my area of expertise. I can draw a lesson out of things, but I'm not at the metaphorical level. So we're just taking this scripture at face value for what it says and running with it. And in today's story, well, let's pick up just from right where we left off last time. In fact, I need to add a little bit to what we talked about last time. Because, you see, I left a little tidbit out. Yes, Jacob was getting wealthier and wealthier, but he didn't hit his gold mine of wealth. Not literal gold mine, his goat and sheep gold mine. Until a little bit later. See, after he got married, he was working for Laban for a while. Laban tricked Jacob into marrying his two daughters, see. And, but they still managed to get along pretty well despite that after the fact. And Jacob had been working for Laban for about 14 years at this point. 7 for each daughter. That was the bargain price, because that's how they did things back then. And Jacob, I suppose Jacob figured he'd had enough. He was ready to go. He had plenty of flocks and herds. He was happy with the kids he had from his 2 wives and the maids that they made him sleep with. You can hear all about that in the previous episode. I ain't here to talk about that today. But Jacob decides that he'd like to leave now. He's ready to go. He's ready to go home. and well, to visit his father, because it's been a while, and he doesn't know if he's dead or not. But he asks Laban in chapter 30, and it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said unto Laban, Send me away, that I may go unto mine own place, and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest the service for which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, well, okay, just so we're clear, in case you didn't understand that, Jacob is saying, hey, I've been here long enough, Laban, I'm ready to go. Just let me take my wives, my kids, and what I've earned from working for you, and just let me go. I'm ready to go home, see my home country, and whatever family that's back there that's still alive. But Laban says, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry. For I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. And he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it thee. So Laban says, slow down, man. Let me increase your wages for you. Let me just don't go yet. You're doing real well. You're good for business. Stick around. Let's talk business, and see about making you wealthier. See about making me wealthier. Come on, let's talk here. You don't need to leave yet now, do you? There's more wealth to be made. And Jacob decides to stay. And then, if you watched last week's video, you remember what I said about what Jacob did with how he bred the sheep and the goats? Well, this is when he now decides to pull that stunt. And this is when he decides to really increase on his own. Maybe it was after this time that he learned the trick or something. Or maybe he was sick and tired of being with Laban, and he decided, you know what, it's time that Laban suffer a bit, and I do even better. I don't know. But Jacob had something up his sleeve that made it work out so that his cattle were doing significantly better than Laban's. And Laban's cattle were getting weak and sick and dying and not having good luck with birthing and not good. And Jacob's getting better and better. Well, that's technically where we left off. Just without all the little shit about Jacob wanting to leave. But I had to bring that up today because that ties in with what happens next after Jacob gets all, he starts really increasing his wealth. So we start off here in chapter 31. And it says, in the first verse it says, and he heard the words of Laban's sons saying, talking about Jacob, he's overhearing Laban's sons talking. And they're saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all the glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Meaning that Laban wasn't too happy with the way things were going. I don't think he knew what Jacob was doing, but he wasn't liking how he was suddenly getting bad luck while Jacob was doing just fine and dandy, getting wealthier by the season. And meanwhile, Laban's getting poor by the season. He ain't broke yet, but his stock is going downhill. And Jacob notices that Laban's not too happy. And And all of a sudden, God decides to show up in the story at such a convenient time. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return now to the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So all of a sudden, Jacob is commanded by God to go home. He doesn't just want to go home now, he is commanded by God to go home, supposedly. And so he calls Rachel and Leah, his two wives, sisters, both daughters of Laban. And he calls them in and he talks to them, and he talks to them about the whole business deal and what, you know, I don't know, I suppose they didn't know what was going on, but he lets them in on what's been happening, aside, of course, from him messing with Laban's flock, and while making his own significantly stronger. And then he makes up this elaborate version of what God said to him. He says, And the angel of God spake to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar. And he just goes on and on and on. And then he says, and then he gets to the part where, in verse 3, the only thing that God actually said in that verse. So Jacob is ridiculously over elaborating, or there was no point of verse 3, I don't know. Jacob just might be lying. But he finally gets to the part where he says, and God told me that I should go home. God told me. I ain't lying, even though it runs in my family. I ain't fooling anyone, even though that really runs in my family. God told me. Whatever, man, whatever. And he convinces his wives. They're okay with it. They've decided they're fine to leave, so they all pack their things up, and they decide to leave right then and there that night. They don't even say goodbye to Laban or anything. They get their shit together, and they split. It says in verse 20, And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face towards Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. Laban had no idea Jacob was gone till the third day. He'd already been gone. Oh, but get this. Right before those verses, something a little interesting happened here. In verse 19, it says, And Laban went to shear his sheep. So Laban was gone when Jacob fled. Well, when he ran. Fled. Very old word. When he ran. Just split. Laban was gone shearing his sheep. And Rachel, the younger daughter, the one that Jacob was into, she's the one that he wanted to marry first. But, well, you can hear about how that went down in the previous episode. Rachel, younger daughter to Laban, had stolen the images that were her father's. Now, you might not know what this is talking about, what it's referring to when it says images, but we're going to find out later on that they are actually gods. Like statues that you pray to, sort of thing. That's what they're called later on, gods. There's some argument about, well, between scholars as to what they actually are, if they're actual, like, you know, heirlooms, or, you know, if they're actually worshipped or not. But here they are referred to as images and then gods. And of course, Laban discovers that he's been robbed and Jacob is gone with all the stuff that was his, which was quite a lot. And he's not happy. And so he gathers up his men. I guess the closest thing he has to a military or you know, armed servants or something. Gathers them all up and he chases after Jacob. But because Jacob was already so far out, it took a while for Laban to catch up to Jacob. Several days, in fact. And something interesting happens, is recorded here. It says, "And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad." And that's it. That's all God said to him, apparently. And then Laban overtook Jacob. And so Laban catches up. And they get into quite the argument. Laban's upset because he didn't get to say goodbye to his daughters or his grandkids. And also, Jacob, you done took some of my shit. I had some images, some gods, some heirlooms of mine, very valuable to me, and they're gone. And then you just up and disappear in the middle of the night. But of course, Jacob he has no idea what's going on, and he fires back at Laban. "Look, man, we've been together for a total of 20 years. I've been working for you this whole time. I asked for you to let me leave before. You wouldn't let me go, and then I noticed, you know, you weren't looking too favorably on me, and you know, you changed my wages 10 times. That supposedly that did happen. I didn't see not all accounts of his wages being changed 10 times are recorded. It's just thrown into the conversation. You changed my earnings 10 times. Then I noticed you're not getting too happy with me, not looking at me, you know, not treating me quite the same as you were before. Even though I ain't done nothing wrong. I've only, you know, worked so hard for you and you know, been treated you fair and everything. You know, of course, not telling them about what he did, you know, to the water, to the cattle, that was his fault. Of course not. Of course he wouldn't tell him that. And of course he's completely innocent about Rachel stealing the images too. Of course he doesn't know about that. But at this point, who knows? He's already screwed over Laban. And I mean, Laban screwed him over too. This is a lot of screwed over. This is like Game of Thrones, but on a non-lethal level. Maybe on a business level. Financially stabbing each other in the back. I don't know. It's a crazy story. So much back and forth and confusion that squabbling like little children. None of them fess up to their own mistakes. They just keep on giving excuses, and they make their way forward somehow. But Jacob acts all innocent. It's like, look, you can search through all my stuff and look for the images, and because I swear I didn't take them, and I didn't tell anyone to take them. So you find the images, and whoever's stuff you find it in that stole them, whoever you find responsible to have stolen your images, your gods, whatever, you can kill them. Because I'm an honest man. And I don't tolerate stealing and screwing over my relatives. I'm just trying to be a fair man. And I want to go home to my other relatives, to my home country. I want to conclude this business as quickly as we can. So, you kill whoever you find out stole those images. Have at my stuff. And look away. Sir. Frisk me. And so Laban does. He goes through all of Jacob's shit. And he goes through every tent, everyone's saddles and everything. And he finally comes to Rachel's tent. And Rachel's in there. In fact, she's sitting on the camel saddlebags that are holding the images. She's sitting right on top of it. And then this happens. And then Rachel says, she said to her father, "Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me." So I don't know exactly what that means, but something about the customs, because some strange sexist rule of the place she used for an excuse to not stand up from off of where she was sitting. Like, it was some sort of weird custom back then that women shouldn't, or women should remain seated when a man comes into the tent. I don't know what exactly the rule and custom is. I'm sure you can Google it, find some scholar to tell you exactly. But it sounds like a ridiculous rule to me. And you know, Laban goes everywhere and he doesn't find the images, the gods that he was looking for. He doesn't find them. Because apparently Rachel won't get up, and for some reason no one can move her, or, you know, she's not going to have to go to the bathroom anytime soon. I don't know. It's dumb. It is dumb, but this is how the story goes. Laban doesn't get it. He doesn't get his shit back. It doesn't happen. I don't know if he realizes that what Rachel is sitting on has the images hidden in the saddlebags. I don't know if he thought that. I don't know if he realized that. But I feel like if he had a sneaking suspicion, he would have figured out some way to get into there to get it back. So maybe Laban was just a complete fool. I don't know. I really don't know. This story might not even be real. Okay? I'm sorry if that doesn't sound very nice, but it is quite possible that this particular story never occurred. I'm just saying. Not everything in the Bible is shit, but you need to take the world with a grain of salt, because lies are fucking everywhere. Even in the Bible, there are lies. This story just might be one of them. But God isn't intervening here, you notice. God isn't saying shit. He's not doing shit. He's not trying to help Laban get his stuff back. Although it is other gods, so maybe he doesn't want Laban to find them. But then again, Rachel stole, and isn't one of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal? I'm pretty sure it's one of them. I don't, I could probably name most of them, but I know that's one of them. All right, thou shalt not steal. But clearly, God has no issue with it here. He has no problem with Rachel stealing from her father. In fact, he supposedly showed up and told Laban to be nice to Jacob. To not harm him, leave him be. Why couldn't God tell Laban, your daughter stole the images, this is where she's going to hide them, and then she's going to be sitting on them, and you can get it back. Jacob had nothing to do with it. He's innocent. You know, just let it go. Let him go. Let bygones be bygones. And say your goodbyes and let it be. You'll have your stuff back, and you'll get your goodbyes in. Why couldn't God do that? Wouldn't that have been fair of God? So what if God acted that way, wouldn't Laban be a lot more interested in worshiping him as God instead of... because God's not trying to help Laban out here. He's only trying to help Jacob out. That's all he's ever done. Even though Jacob has cheated people multiple times, and he seems to continually get away with it. And then he decides to screw over Laban. You know, he had a trick that made Laban's cattle weak and his own cattle strong. Why couldn't Jacob have just been nice and made both cattle strong so they could grow together as business allies? But Jacob wanted to make Laban weak, wanted to cheat him over, and God seemed to have no issue with it. And then Rachel steals from Laban, and God doesn't try to help Laban now. Sure, maybe Laban had it coming for cheating Jacob over by making him work 7 extra years for the woman he actually wanted to marry. But we don't see God saying for Jacob to do that, that is the comic revenge. No, it just seems like people are being mean to each other. Just going back and forth. And then God just picks a side and then stays on that side when it's convenient. He just shows up. First, Jacob wants to leave, tries to, get Laban to let him go. Laban talks him into stay, and then all of a sudden, God conveniently shows up and says, it's time to go. And Jacob leaves in the middle of the night, and then Rachel steals from Laban, and then God doesn't tell Laban where the images are. He just says, hey, be nice to Jacob, basically. Well, he says, speak not to Jacob either good or bad. I wonder if Jacob disguised himself and somehow went over and fooled Laban into thinking that he had a dream from God telling him to be nice to Jacob. When you remember Abraham was a scammer. You remember Isaac lied about his wife, same as Abraham had done before. And then Jacob has scammed and lied his way through things. Who's to say he didn't pull some elaborate scheme for the times and fooled Laban into thinking that God had told him to leave Jacob alone, to speak neither good nor ill to him. And God doesn't even help Laban find his stuff. Like, what the hell? This is a strange God. This God doesn't act like an almighty, powerful, just being. But they have their talk. Laban decides to listen to what God told him. And him and Jacob resolve their differences. They make a peace pact. Laban gets to say his official goodbyes to his daughters and his grandchildren. And they finally part ways. Laban doesn't get his shit back. Rachel gets to keep what she stole. Jacob never finds out. Apparently. We're not told that he does, but I'm guessing that he does. Maybe he did a long time later and then it was too late to do anything about it. I don't know. We could give Jacob the benefit of the doubt, but considering how he treated Laban before, I kind of doubt it. He probably thought, oh, that bastard deserved it anyways. I'm glad you stole from him and that you got away with it. And that he didn't kill us. Because he had the means to. He really did have the means to. You can read about it. All there in chapter 31. And there's a lot more details in there than what I'm given in the conversation and in the peace pact that they did. They made a whole mountain of stone. Well, not a mountain, but a big pile of large rocks. And they went their separate ways. And in the next story, Jacob and his brother Esau, who he screwed over originally, finally, at long last, meet up again. And that will probably be the first good story. I mean, I haven't read it yet. We will see. But we might have our first positive lesson from the Bible this whole time coming up next week. What do we have here? Well, it's just another story of people getting screwed over and God's favorites getting away with all of it. Jacob never gets in trouble by God for what he did to Laban's cattle. Rachel never gets in trouble for stealing the images, the gods from Laban. The only interaction from God is entirely on Jacob's side again. You know, if Jacob didn't like staying with Laban so much, he didn't have to screw over Laban like that. I mean, he learned a lot of tricks to the trade, probably, while working for Jacob. And, while working for Laban. And you know, I just noticed, I made a small mistake here. Jacob didn't work for Laban just for 20 years. It says, thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. So let's see, that's a total of 40 years. And I swear on my honor, I did not use a calculator to add that up. It has been a bad math day for me, though. 40 years total that Jacob stayed with Laban and got his wages changed 10 times. You know, in all that time, Jacob could have left. He didn't have to stay there. But he did. He could have tried to leave multiple times, but here we only see that he only asked to leave once. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's screwing over Laban this whole time. And so all of a sudden he just up and leaves. Did he try to leave multiple times and they weren't recorded? Like what the hell, Bible? You're supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to make sense. You're not supposed to have plot holes. You're supposed to be perfect, complete, unedited. Ooh. This book has been edited a lot. And the Bible even says later on to not add or take away from this book. But the irony of it all is that while there are people out there, like my parents, who really devote themselves to following the King James Version of the Bible, there are supposedly more accurate versions out there. But even then, even with the supposedly more accurate versions of the Bible that are out there, this book has already been edited hundreds and thousands of times. There have been many, many changes from the original writings. There's a lot lost just in translation. Maybe some of the important details, that's possible. But if this is supposed to be the holy, infallible Word of God, there shouldn't be a problem translating it into multiple languages so that everyone can be on the same page and understand it in the same context. But it's been changed so many times. But people want to believe it and want to follow this book to the letter without taking any of those edits into regard, the hundreds of thousands of times. My parents won't use any other version but King James, and honestly, the King James Version is probably one of the worst versions, as has come to my understanding. The lack of knowledge, the unfortunate ignorance that people have regarding this book, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it many times again in the future, this is not a holy book. The only kind of holy book this is a book that is full of holes, plot holes. But here is where we're going to end the video. So what did we learn today? We really shouldn't screw each other over. And God is of no help. According to this story, God is of very little help. Seems like the only thing that really saved Jacob here was his ability to talk his way out of shit. And maybe to pull some strings to convince some people that God was talking to him in a dream. Strange how we've had that in previous stories as well. God talking to pharaohs and kings in their dreams. Specifically about Abraham's wife. Check those videos out if you haven't yet. I cannot believe how many scams are in this book. Right out the gate. I never realized this growing up, and I've read this book many times with my family in the morning, every single day, while I was living with them. There was hardly ever a day when we were not reading from this book. And I didn't realize this shit. I didn't realize what I was reading. I knew the stories front to back. I knew it was wrong to screw other people over. I knew all that. But I didn't realize how much of it there was in the Bible and how God seems to defend these people, these scammers. Is that really a God you want to pray to? A God you want to worship? Dedicate your life to? You really think that's a God that gives a shit about you? When he could very easily be playing favorites with other people? Because it seems like that's what he loves to do. He's been playing favorites this entire time. From Genesis, from the very beginning, chapter 1, and creating his people. Noah was his first favorite. And then Abraham was a favorite. Enoch was a favorite too. Supposedly God just took him, made him disappear. And you know, Enoch gets his own book. But it got left out of the Bible. Because apparently it didn't match the rest of the Bible well enough for the Catholic Church, for whatever inspired men of God put the books of the Bible together. Maybe they weren't the Catholic Church. I think they were. I believe their name, the specific name of the group that did it, was called the Canon of Worms, if I'm not mistaken. I remember reading about that. I was a Christian at the time. I read about that. I might be wrong. I might be getting that name from somewhere else. Canon of Worms. Literally, Canon of Worms. I don't know if that's 3 N's or just 2. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. There were groups of people back in the day that were referred to as canons, I believe. Which changed meanings a lot over the years. But anyways, all by men. The book of Enoch was not good enough for the Bible, supposedly. Or it was too different. It was too different. Maybe it was too revealing. Maybe that's why it was left out. Who knows? It's not even in the ESV version of the Bible, which is supposedly the most accurate. But I'd say the lesson is, don't depend on Jehovah. Don't be screwing other people over. Well, I'm going to shut up now. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like, subscribe if you haven't, share with your friends if you will. It's important it is important for people to know, to be careful about what they read and what they believe. Because I swallowed this book up, hook, line, and sinker, believed every word of it, and didn't think about what I was reading. I mean, I did, but not in the way I am now. Now it's from a logical perspective. I'm noticing things now that I never did before. And I'm hoping to help other people see the same things. And maybe through that make the world a wiser and better place. Stay safe, my friends. Until next week, farewell.